With so many tuner choices, upgrading to a new machine can be kind of confusing. Unless you are changing to a machine with the exact same spec as the one you removed, some modifications will be necessary to your guitar in order to install them. That could be enlarging the peg holes and or drilling additional mounting screw holes. Tuners basically break down into two different types. You have vintage style and you have sealed machines. Vintage style machines include open back tuners like our Waverleys. Clouson types, that include Keystones and 6-in-line. And 3-on-a-plate tuners like our Golden Age here. Vintage tuners can be easily identified by their press-fit bushing. These bushings are pressed into the wood of the peg head and held in by friction. More often than not, you'll see vintage tuners installed into 1/4-inch holes that have been reamed to 11/32 on the peg head face in order to accept the bushing. Now in an old guitar like this Gibson, any modifications that you would do to it would have a negative impact on the overall value. So when choosing replacement tuners for this guy, I'm choosing machines of the exact same spec that'll drop right in and install without having to do anything. The tuners on this guitar are nearly 60 years old now. They still work fine, but I'm a little worried that the knobs are about to dry up and crack off of there. So for the sake of originality, I'm just taking these off and replacing them with another set so the owner can continue to play the guitar without having to worry about the knobs. When installing the new machines, I'm using the original screws so I don't cross-thread those holes. And I'm also leaving the original peghead bushings in place so I don't accidentally chip the finish out trying to replace them with the new ones. The old ones are fine, they can stay just where they are. The new tuners are installed. I might actually take these off and age them just to make them match the rest of the guitar really good. I'm going to take these old tuners, I'm going to wrap them up for safekeeping, stick them in the case compartment of the guitar. Next to vintage style machines, we have sealed gear. These have a die-cast housing that encloses the worm and cog gear to keep dirt and debris out, as well as to keep them permanently lubricated. They look generally the same, brand to brand, so they're easy to spot. But the best way to determine if this is what you have on your guitar is to look at your peg head. If your guitar has a 10mm threaded bushing and surrounded washer on it, then it's a good chance that you have a sealed gear machine on your guitar. Turn it over, and they're held in place on the peg head with a single mounting screw. The peg holes for sealed gear tuners vary from 3/8 of an inch to 10mm depending on the brand that you're using. The hole is drilled straight through with no step to accommodate the larger housing of the sealed gear machine. So if you're installing this type of machine on a vintage guitar, you're at least going to have to enlarge those peg holes. When enlarging peg holes to install a sealed gear machine, the right tool for the job is a tapered reamer. It keeps the holes round, square, and clean. Something to think about when switching between sealed gear tuners is the location of the mounting screw tab. It's not the same on any two machines, even within the same brand. Here's 3 different Grovers, and the tab's in 3 different locations on all of them. So when switching from one sealed gear to another, expect to have to re-drill for the mounting screw tabs. Then you're going to have some holes left over from the other machines, and there's a couple different ways that you can go about dealing with those. One is to just leave them open like I did on this particular guitar. That way they're ready to go should you decide to install the original tuners back down the road somewhere. Another option is to just take the old mounting screws and run those in. That keeps the holes free of debris or any kind of crud that might get down in there, and moisture as well. But if neither of those are suitable and you want a seamless look, the best option is to plug those holes and finish over them. Here's an example where a modern style machine has been designed to look like a vintage tuner. The housing looks very similar and the knobs are the same, but as soon as you flip them over you can see the difference. The housing on the modern machine has a larger diameter casting and requires a larger peg hole to fit in. Some locking tuners don't utilize mounting screws at all. What they have is an indexing pin underneath the housing that fits into a hole drilled in the peg head, which keeps the tuner in place under string tension. Now that hole's kind of tough to drill because it's underneath the housing. It's tough to line up. So to make that job easier, we have a drill jig for just that job, to drill those holes perfectly. You'll see a lot of vintage guitars that have been modified for sealed gear machines. And more than ever, people want to reconvert those guitars back to their original format because they want to sell them or they just like the vintage look. Whatever the reason is, there's a problem when you want to do that because the holes have been enlarged and the tuners just want to swim in there. So we came up with a conversion bushing to reduce the diameter of that hole so you can reinstall your original machines. I've got the conversion bushings installed. Now I'm just going to put the tuners back in place. Put the screws in the original screw holes. You'll notice the machines are nice and snug. And they're no longer moving around in the 10mm holes. Okay, the original machines are back on this guitar and they look right at home. We have a lot of different options available to us these days, probably more than ever. So whether you're upgrading for looks, function, or collectability, follow these tips and it should make the job go a lot easier for you.